Hello, everybody, and thanks for listening. Without further ado, you know that I have been paying attention to this whole debacle about the Democrats coming forward with two articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. So, this article here is in politics, and it says Trump may be so much worse than Nixon, but Republicans don't seem to care. So this is SV Days, Huffington Post. So some people are going to say, "Oh yeah, we know who's talking about this and who's reporting this. Articles out of Huffington Post and but there's so much collusion, there's so much corruption that goes on in government and White House, and so anybody remember this? It might be telling our ages. So this picture here is President Nixon, for those of you that don't know who this guy is. And for those of you that do know who this is and remember this was not that far down the memory lane. Following his resignation, U.S. President Richard M. Nixon flashes the V for victory sign as he boards his Marine One helicopter for the last time on the south lawn of the White House, August 9th. This was in 1974. And so this picture was taken during that time. And so Nixon was in the middle of a scandal. And so Bedford N.H. Richard Nixon used tens of thousands of his campaign dollars to finance a burglary of the Democratic National Committee headquarters in order to cheat in his 1972 presidential re-election. And so they're going to draw in this article similarities with Trump and Nixon, but they're going to show you how Trump, his approach is a lot far worse than Nixon's back during his candidacy, or his presidency, we'll say. So 47 years later, Donald Trump, according to witness testimony in congressional hearings, used hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to coerce a foreign government in order to cheat in his 2020 re-election. And so it's very, very similar, but it's actually a lot worse things that they have brought about to impeach Donald Trump. And I believe this is coming at a time where they know that he can do either another 4 years or they can curtail it and stop it now that he's close to ending his first term. Because they do 2 terms, they do 4, they do 8. They can do a total of 8 years. And so I believe since 2020 is approaching and people are on the campaign trail, from what I heard, Kamala Harris dropped out. And then there may be some other people that may end up dropping out, and it always ends up like that. They are making sure that they have been working on trying to impeach Donald Trump so that he cannot be reelected. So we don't know how this is going to wind up, but so far this article is stating that 47 years later, Donald Trump, according to witness testimony in congressional hearings, used hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to coerce foreign government in order to cheat in his 2020 re-election. Yet, while Nixon wound up resigning after his fellow Republicans in the Senate told him they would vote to remove him from office, Trump today appears likely to survive a Senate trial, even as the House prepares to debate 2 articles of impeachment later this week. So Americans are guided in many ways by their leadership, said Al Cardenas, a former chairman of the Republican Party of Florida. And so there was a significant bipartisan and thus an agreement that President Nixon had breached the threshold regarding abuse of power and thus was impeachable. And so that also came up as one of the articles, is abuse of power in terms of Trump. And so either today values have evolved, partisanship has hit a new high, or the caliber of GOP representation has diminished, and take your pick. And so reflecting on perhaps driving that difference across the decades of 31% of Republicans wound up abandoning Nixon and saying that he should be removed from office, while only 7% of Republicans today believe that about Trump. So at Trump's rally in Minnesota, or no, not Minnesota, but it was Minneapolis, in October, construction contractor Jason Munson said that he had no interest in any facts that did not come from Trump personally, and that Trump's election was divine intervention and it was the hand of God, he said. So some people are really wanting Trump to be reelected. They're supporting him. And there's others that are in doubt or in limbo. And so at the Iowa Republican Party's annual fundraiser dinner in Des Moines last month, oral historian Christine Bartley said the Democrats should defeat Trump in an election next year rather than impeaching him, regardless of what he did in the Ukraine, or what the Ukraine that is, unless the president is running around with a gun shooting people. Just let it go, she said. So that doesn't sound good to me. So that really was tasteless. But moving along, at a countdown to victory reception, Christmas party for the New Hampshire Republicans at the restaurant in Bedford last week, Plymouth Town Selectman John Radlett said politicians try to cheat. There are politicians that try to cheat, that it was pretty much impossible to know what really happened, even with Nixon. So are you ever going to find out the true facts? No, he said, adding that he was sticking with Trump, as he says it's a witch hunt. And so that has come out in the news. Trump has expressed his disgruntledness about this whole debacle about the impeachment articles that have come forward from Democrats. And then there's some Republicans that are not supporting, and then others that are. And so Republican pollster Neil Newhouse said that there is not much in common between American politics today versus 5 decades ago, so it has little to do with the perceived seriousness of the crime, though I would argue that the break-in and cover-up was far more egregious than the current charges. And so Newhouse said, adding, 1974 was a different, less partisan time. Today's polarized is unprecedented. And so what they're trying to say, basically, in layman's terms, is that what Nixon did is far more worse, they feel, the Republicans. The break-in, the cover-up, it's like cut and dry. You see that there's corruption going on. There's no way around that. But with Donald Trump, there's no break-in, there's no cover-up that they would presume is going on. But they feel it's a lesser of the evils. Let's just put it that way, in that terms. So Both the Democratic and the Republican agree that the dramatically changed media landscape is a major cause of the difference. In the 1974, all three broadcast television networks carried the impeachment hearings live, meaning that there was literally nothing else on TV during those hours. Today, not only do hardcore Republicans have news outlets that cater to their preferences, per se, but there are hundreds of other capable channels, or cable channels, that is, I said capable, and yeah, cable ready channels and internet that provide policies free content for those who prefer that. So Anthony Scarsmucci, Trump's short-lived White House communications director in 2017, who has now become a Trump critic, has a two-word answer for what's different: Fox News. So according to witness testimony as well as the rough transcript of Trump's July 25th phone call of the Ukraine president, which has come out in the news, Trump demanded that Ukraine investigation former Vice President Joe Biden, as well as the support of a conspiracy theory, which falsely claims that the Russian intelligence agencies did not help Trump win the 2016 election, but rather it was Ukraine officials who framed Russia by using fake evidence. So he made $391 million in the military aid contingent on Ukraine publicly announcing the probes, but then backed down after the White House learned that the whistleblower complaint on the matter was about to reach Congress. But the pro-Trump media have largely been echoing Trump's claims that he did nothing wrong in demanding investigations, or that it is or was wrong. It was nevertheless not impeachable. So Joe Walsh, a former Republican congressman running against Trump for the 2020 nomination, said that he has had trouble getting coverage from pro-Trump news outlets because of his unsparing criticism of the president. So it is a far worse abuse of power, he said, of Trump's attempt to coerce Ukraine, but Trump has something Nixon didn't have: Fox News, conservative media. That's the difference. So GOP-based voters are indeed getting a diet of commentary that supports Trump's contention and that he did nothing wrong, said Rory Cooper. So a Republican consultant and one-time top aide to the former House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. But he added that equally important is the extinction of the moderate Republicans. So centrists or New England Republicans that turned on Nixon don't exist in today's Congress. So the longer this remains viewed as a partisan exercise, the longer the numbers will remain stagnant, which is to say it's unlikely for them to move much more absent a significant development. So another key difference in 1974 is how the scandals play out. Nixon spent well over a year denying that he had a knowledgeable or a break-in or cover-up, as his approval numbers slowly deteriorated. Then, after the Supreme Court ordered the release of the audio tapes that proved Nixon had been lying, his support collapsed to the point that senior Republican senators told him that he would be removed from the office following the impeachment trial. So in Trump's case, within weeks of the House Democrat revealing the whistleblower had filed a complaint about his dealings with Ukraine, Trump himself ordered the release of the July 25th call memo, which showed him asking for a favor of investigation in response to the Ukraine president mention of military aid. So days later, Trump told the reporters Volodymyr Zelensky should start a major investigation into the Bidens, and moments later added that China should investigate them as well. And so the effect of getting such demanding evidence out of in the open right at the onset may have been to make every subsequent piece of corroborating proof that came out seem small in comparison to the hearings themselves anticlimactic. So my gut tells me that the smoking gun tape has already come out, said Steve Dupre, a Republican National Committee member from New Hampshire who was also attending the Bedford Christmas party. So an average of the Americans who are shoveling snow in New Hampshire is not paying attention to this. But one former senator, RNC, member of Trump's impeachment, is not getting as much support as Nixon because voters understood that they would get some liable to say do irresponsible things when they voted for him. So similar to the way Americans did not support Republicans' impeachment of Bill Clinton in 1998, people knew that Clinton was a sex fiend, and they voted for him anyway, he said. So speaking on the condition of the anonymity, for the point of view of the Trump voters, they knew when they voted for him that he was pretty outrageous and disruptive, rude, crude, and unattractive. Not everyone, of course, downplays Trump's actions. So what the president did was so much worse than what Richard Nixon did, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told CBS last month. Indeed, Pelosi's September 24th announcement of the House would move forward with an impeachment inquiry. After months of warning, her newly won majority against impeachment saw dozens of skeptical House Democrats switch to supporting impeachment, as well as to shift in public opinion generally, while Americans had previously opposed impeaching Trump by 11-point margin. That has swung to a 4-point margin in support. That movement, though, has since stalled and may have even moved slightly in the opposite direction, as the Republicans argue that with the election coming up in 11 months, impeachment is not appropriate. So Representative Adam Schiff, a California Democrat and the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee that conducted the initial impeachment hearings, nevertheless said that the Democrats have no choice but to impeach Trump because failing to impeach him would encourage him to continue trying to improperly use his position to help his re-election campaign. The argument, why don't you just wait, amounts to this. Schiff says, why don't you just let him cheat in one more election? Why not let him cheat just one more time? Why not let him have foreign help just one more time? So that is bad. That's sort of to me, I'm looking at it as sort of a sarcastic statement of question as to why not let him get away with it one more time. But also, it makes you think, do you really want this man to go ahead and do what he did last time, this time, for another 4 years? And so this is just really crazy, but we'll see how this whole debacle unfolds. Right now, they are trying to correlate, or they're trying to basically show you similarities and differences, and then who might be far worse, and then some people are arguing against it. And so we will only see how this will play out in the media and in the White House, because it is really hitting, as they say, the shit is hitting the fan. And so it's come up time and time again about his collusion with the Russians, having to do with a lot of tampering with the elections and finagling with other business matters that seem like this is now coming out in these forms. But he claims that no, there wasn't nothing that he was trying to do that was in collusion. So we'll see how this plays out in the media. All we can do is just sit back and watch this show unfold And it will. And so we can only just sit back and see how this will play out. Without further ado, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening.